So let me introduce to you Dr. Ariel Felipe Gomez. He is graduated in physics by the University of Havana. He is a master by the Instituto Superior Politécnico in laser physics. He is a PhD in the Physical Institute of Leningrad in quantum electronics. He was a professor during the 80s. He worked also in photochemistry and luminescence in the Criminalistic Institute of Havana. In the 90s, he developed medical equipment for laser therapy of low power in the Institute of Applied Physics of the Science Academy in Cuba. He also did a postdoctorate stage in Munich in 1986 and in Leningrad in 89, in Paris in 2000. He worked as a scientific consultant at the Cuban embassy in Paris, and he received the Medal Carlos Finlay by the Science Academy in Cuba in 2000. Since 2006, he is the coordinator of programs of the Office of the Scientific Consultant of the State Council. He has worked in a number of scientific events, and he has organized international seminars in nanoscience and nanotechnologies that were developed in Havana in 2006, 2008, 2010. I will be speaking in Spanish, because if I speak in English, the majority perhaps will not understand me, and my American friends will not understand me either. So before anything, I would like to thank Fiocruz and this organization that has conceptualized and carried out, and everybody's united here, scientists of different fields. I was surprised actually, because as you will see, I have a philosopher, a lawyer, chemist, physics scientist. They're all talking here in a language that apparently is not very common, but we all understood it. So for me, this is a lesson that this event has given us, that my experience in other events are very vertical, very specialized, and they do not allow this type of exchange. So it's good that we open our minds, open our vision, because of the problem we have ahead of us. I would also like to say, but when you invited me to come here to talk about nanotechnology in Cuba, I felt a little bit that bailar en casa del trompo, Cuban to talk about nanotechnology in Brazil, it's something that's out of place. And I thought, well, what could be interesting for an event such as this? Cuba is a small country. So what are we going to do in nanotechnology? What are our ideas? What are the basic principles of our strategy? Because we are conformed and established, because we see that we are in a process, a development process of this idea, and also to implement this idea. And so, of course, Cuba, we have had some results, and we talk about the results of science. I'm talking of results that are being implemented in the society, that the benefits have reached the society. Because the Cuban biotechnology, it's something that we bet strongly in the 80s in my country. And on this base of the biotechnology, this is how we focus in the development of the bio-nanotechnology. To start, I would like to just do a little bit about the population of my country. I think we are smaller than Sao Paulo, Rio. There's a lot more than we are. But we have about 100% in education, in elementary education up to 12 years old. And Oh, wait a second. So doctors, we have one for every 179 inhabitants. We have 69 university centers, this number of scientists, and about 15% of these are doctors. And in institutions, we have about over 200 investigation centers. And we have 30,000 people working in that. And what we're doing in terms of gross national products, about 1.9%. The problems we have, problems with water, problems with energy, and health. We do not have an electronic or a chemist in industry like yours. We don't. So our social problems are these, and we have to develop we have to develop nanotechnology. So I'm going to focus in health problems. In Cuba, we have a health program that integrates a number of aspects, and the result of this program, you can see here how we increase the life expectancy up to 78 over these years. How does this work? Well, it's almost 78, 79.9 of life expectancy. And the mortality also have been lowered the same way. And this put us in a very favorable situation in terms of the underdeveloped country, the so-called third world countries, or the developing countries. So there are three systems of primary epidemiology with the primary diagnosis and early diagnosis here. And the biotechnology and the pharmaceutical industry, it's connected the system to ensure the means and the basis so that the system will actually work. An example here we can have, there is infirmity that we developed ourselves this vaccination of hepatitis B. Since 1991, for children below 15 years old, in 2007, for the whole population, the hepatitis B has been practically eliminated with the product of Cuban technology. This is an idea of a center of or a pole of science, and so we have here of molecular technology. We have the National Center of Investigation. It's a number of centers that are together in a program for the development of biotechnology. Fundamentally we produce vaccines and pharmaceutical products. For the moment, we have the direct products for the internal market because we have to purchase these things of pharmaceutical products that are very expensive. So we produced in Cuba because the Cuban population does need that. So this center has about 10,000 workers. Out of 3,000, they have some kind of university degree. Of course, these numbers, they vary quite a lot, so normally they're increasing the numbers. The most important characteristic is that we do closed cycle strategy. Since we planned this research, we focus because we need a product. When we start working on hepatitis B, we needed it, so that we started with the monoclonal antibodies to develop this vaccination because we thought it was a solution, but we didn't have the money to purchase that. So we started to work because this research was focused in the production with the economy and that re-enters this form, so that we have like a feedback of this development system that all of you have seen. As you know, it's very expensive, the pharmaceutical products, so that's why we developed that. there are 91 products. 33 of them are vaccines, 33 oncological products, 18 cardiovascular products. And another very interesting aspect, that's the transfer of technology. So we have technology transfer centers in Iran, Vietnam, China, and even in Brazil. We are building one on India and Algeria. Algeria, we have centers for the production of monoclonal antibodies, so we can use in vaccination projects. Aquí, we have two examples of vaccination. This is a vaccine that was developed in 2003, and then we're now the immunization program in 2006. So it's totally by chemical synthesis. That's how we used it. I'm not a doctor myself, but that's the live part in order to have the recombinant DNA here. 2006, we have this herbapenta that is a pentavalent vaccination that is for 5 different types of conditions. So it's in the market, and it's being sold and applied, and it's very successful. We also use plants to produce part of the interferons or the antibodies that are necessary. So we can do it in the tobacco plant. That's a lot more efficacious than the mice that we use. So then the antibodies then are afterwards produced. So of course we do have a computer base. That's one of the most developed ones. So we are dealing with the production of proteins, or modeling of proteins, antivirals. So the Pegylated Interferon that has been developed, that we get the interferon with a polymer, and what it does, it kind of fools the body when it enters the body. Normally you use 3 doses in one week to maintain it in your body, but when you use this pegylation technique, with one application, you have the interferon in the body, because it does the opposite effect of the problem that has this type of drug. Is that one side it cures, but creates a number of mechanisms. But this product itself, I think, costs about $50, and this one is $150. So the aggregated value that you have with this products practically compensates totally. That's another example here of a very small size proteoliposomes, VSSP. We put it together with this bacteria of the Neisseria meningitidis, and we use nanoparticles that are used in different types of vaccination. In Cuba, there are other important research institutions that deals with themes that are pertaining to the theme of nanotechnology. So the Minister of Higher Education, we have the University of Matanzas, the Higher Polytechnic Institute, and also the University of Havana. This is the strongest pole. The different departments in chemistry, physics, and biology, they have investigations, they have research with very important results. Within the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Environment, we have the Higher Institute for Applied Science Technology and the National Center for Toxicology. This is another example here of what we're doing the University of Havana. This is a form of delivery how we can, by varying the pH, you can produce a delivery of different products. In other words, you put the drug inside of a polymer that it will, when you change the pH, then it liberates the drug, delivers the drug. So this is the so-called nano-encapsulation. We use organic matrices and inorganic matrix as well. So this work has been published. Here it is. Another interesting team that is produced by the Protein Center of the University of Havana, it's tycolocine. That's a toxin that we can obtain, and it perforates the membrane. See, here it is. To use the acetylcholicines to perforate the membrane, so we will allow the delivery of the drug inside of the cell. The micro emotions and the emotions, how Professor Antonio Tedesco has presented here. We are working also with the nano emotions because they are very stable system and very good for the controlled delivery system of a drug. Another one is the diagnostic applications, that is nanoparticles of gold that are used to detect nitrous oxide and other with the light, with nitrogen or light. We have a fluorescence that then can be determined to use. The same thing happened with the biosensors, the use of different enzymes to detect. We also have osseous acrylic cement with materials that can be used. And we also have biomaterials such as the tissue acryl and apophyll. They're used for sealing or bandaging a injury. But how can we develop this? How can we boost the biotechnology in Cuba that can be used as a platform to institutions? A number of investigations and of interest. So we also have a center that's very advanced. To characterize, it's important to have a characteristic to put it in its place, and also to the education of young specialists, training centers abroad. So the main research activities here they are. So we do have the training of young people, and here like to obtain carbon nanotubes, to obtain different ways that is known. We use pressure to do that, and we have some good results that way. Our products, like it was shown, you can put together a nanoparticle, and this allows you to deliver the antibody to the zone in the body where you have the cancer. Because of we can use the microscope of atomic force to use the coupling, to see the coupling of ninotuzumab, that's a monoclonal antibody, to see the receptor of the growth factor that's developing in the cancer cell. We can observe this. Another theme, the so-called two optical tweezers. This is a very interesting theme. Because in the case of a change, in the case of a molecular motor, that's a very important concept. So this is the scheme here. where the DNA is, and you can study then the process of replication of the DNA with the optical tweezer. You have 2 points, 2 extremes, and so you can then study this replicating process that will allow you to that you can see if there is any change during this process. Another theme that has been the essence, we created an ad hoc group to deal with the problems of the development of nanotechnologies in Cuba. This is the principle. We have to have a nanotechnology, but it has to be harmonic, but it has to be together with the economic development of the country. These are the principles, the precautionary principle as a starting point for the work that the things that are not clear. If you use the precautionary principle, it's important. Non-regulation is very important. We have to see it with a dynamic approach. We have seen it that it's a continuous knowledge process, and we have advancing. So the regulation has to be implemented as we advance dynamically the enterprise as we are. Another thing important that we have to mention is that the poor countries, they are in a disadvantage both in financial as well as material resources with the rich countries. But we have to maintain of what's happening and how we can take to our society all of these new changes, all of these new things that are produced internationally. These are the reference sources that I have. I can, in February of 2008, in June, they established the regulatory aspects of nanomaterials, and the different rules that can be applied within the studies of nanotechnology. And also the manufacturer that was also, we had a working party with the OECD. So we are following this and we're interpreting and assimilating all of the information. And the Europeans also have the program. One of its programs called Framing Nano that has grouped everything that they have done, the program number 5. I have 3 projects. They invested about 3 million euros. In program 6, there's 28. And now they are about in 30 million, 30 millions. And now in program number 7 is 70 million euros. For us, it's something unthinkable. So this is, we have an open information that you can assume whether we are following up all of this information. The ISO regulations, TC229 with all the formulation that was shown before, and of course the regulation from the USA with the FDA and the EPA, and we are following them and we are assimilating independently of the product that of course adapting to the products that compete to us. And in Cuba, the support for this, we have a field of good practice that being established. I'm not going to read, it's only mentioned here. But since we started producing drugs to produce a vaccine that's similar for the World Health Organization, therefore could be commercialized internationally, we had to establish a number of norms and principles of production that has to be in agreement that's necessary to produce effective drugs. And this we are doing in Cuba. The strategic actions that we are doing and that are being planned, in which we are facing at this moment, is to organize a policy to develop a safety in nanotechnology, regulation in nanotechnology, to boost human resources, and to do research in the development of nanotechnology. And the concrete parts that I think I still have time here, the formation of human resources and the action on investigation, which is the development of nanotechnology safety. That's a preclinical studies that can allow us to arrive to conclusive studies. And last is to monitor all this information that's available internationally to resolve the problems we have there. I would like to finish with this two slides. This is the Gapminder in 2006. You can see in respect to child natality. You can see here the difference between the different countries. You know, the countries that have less money per capita, and here is the placing. So in Cuba, at least, in terms of where we are, we're doing pretty good, in a very favorable position indeed. Here's another a map of this year, and here's Cuba. It's talking about life expectancy. In 78 we are. So the index that demonstrate that we're established in Cuba in respect to health in our country, we are doing very well, and the statistics show us that it's very, very favorable, and we're feeling very safe that way. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the opportunity.